Welcome back to South Africans Abroad. Today we got a guest who's built a legend status in motocross. Born in South Africa and making waves in the motocross scene. He's helped launch and shape some of the sport's biggest names. He's famous for pushing riders hard and has a knack for getting people to believe in more than they can do. We'll hear about his journey from home soil to the big leagues, what he misses about South Africa, and what's next for himself. We are, of course, talking about Aldon Baker. Aldon, how you doing?
Hey Warren, man, all good, man, and I appreciate the kind words. You're way too kind. I don't know, and I'll have to slip you a couple of bucks for that one.
I think you're being a bit modest, man. It's I'm very excited to have you on the podcast, and I've been trying for quite a while because, man, you're literally a legend. For people who don't know, if you can just explain exactly what you do.
So I train motocross riders in the disciplines of motocross and supercross, which is obviously the more American side of things with dirt bike racing. So that's what I've done, and that's what I've done it for now. Gosh, 26 years.
Okay, so you're originally from South Africa. Whereabouts you from?
Pietermaritzburg was where I was born and obviously lived went to school in Pietermaritzburg, and then obviously had to do the army back in those days. And then after the army, that's when I got into the actual mountain bike scene, and it developed from there, then traveling abroad.
Okay, yeah. I was actually going to say, because you didn't start out in motocross, it was mountain bike.
Yes. So I'd always had a thing for motorsports back in the day. Actually, it was more towards road racing. My cousin, I don't know, probably a lot of South Africans will know Russell Wood. So he was a really good, motorcycle track road racing guy, and so there was always a sort of an interest in that from my end. I could never really afford to get into that because that like with any motorsport, and especially that one's pretty expensive. But I did dabble in it a bit I had some buddies that we had some 50cc and 125 road racing bikes, and when we could, we'd go racing and do that. And that's really where sort of I really got into the motorsport side of it. I obviously followed motocross and all that, but didn't get the opportunity to try and venture into that. But the interest was there. And then really after the army, I went overseas and saw mountain biking developing, and then bought a mountain bike, came back to South Africa and started racing there. And then that kind of took off. And from there it developed where I needed to, travel overseas if I was going to do anything with it.
Okay, so let's just go back a little bit, yeah? Firstly, why did you decide on the States?
I had a contact actually through another South African friend that his sister was already racing downhill in the United States, and she was based in California. So I thought, man, I need something. I can't just rock up with nowhere to go. And I gathered California was the mecca for mountain biking at the time.
Okay.
And so that's where it all started. Basically flew over with whatever I'd saved, and I had some help from some very kind people from South Africa that sort of gave me the chance to go and see what you can do. And so I was initially based in California, and then was racing the sort of the local series plus what they call the Norba Nationals. So based in California, the riding and racing there, and then I had eyeballed a couple of big sort of World Cup races in Europe, the ones that I could afford to and make it happen.
Let's talk about the visa process, because obviously it's very difficult to get into the States.
Yeah.
How did you go about getting a visa and choosing the right path?
Well, initially I had to come in as a visitor, and you are given 3 months. If I can correctly remember, that's what I was given. But I had planned that I wouldn't be around for the full 3 months because I'd go to Europe and race mountain bike, because I had to start off with just the normal. I couldn't actually apply for an athlete's visa yet, because I didn't really have anything, Okay. So the idea was to, all right, I'd come in as a visitor, do some races, and it was all on my own, no sponsorship from other than some people helping me in South Africa, and see what developed. And actually, that developed into where I got a contract to race for a team. There was a USA team. At the time, it was called Outland. It was a new bicycle full suspension bike that had been developed, and they gave me a contract, and it was actually through that contract that I could then apply for an athlete's visa. So it had to go in sort of stages to get to that point. And then once I had an athlete's visa, you aren't really restricted to 3 months as long as you're proving what you're doing and what races you are going to. So that made it a lot easier for sure.
So let's just move across now to the motocross side of things. How did you get involved with motocross, coming from a mountain bike background?
One of my sponsors actually started in South Africa, was Oakley. And then I linked to the Oakley in America support. And it was through the Oakley connection that I met sort of other athletes. And one of those athletes was a motorcycle guy. And obviously I was interested in the motorcycle stuff. And that was Ricky Carmichael. And at that time, he was still in a smaller class. But he used to be hanging out obviously for a decent amount of time in January, always in California, he actually stayed with Johnny O'Mara, who was an ex-motocross guy, but was into mountain biking.
Okay.
So Johnny and me had become friends. We lived, obviously in the same state, and he kind of connected us, and it really just started with a friendship that, hey man, yeah, I respect what you're doing. But I remember just mentioning to him that, hey man, I think you could be a lot better than you are if you got conditioning, because I started to understand that, yeah, they did a lot of riding, but they didn't really think of the other parts of it. Okay. So he mentioned that, hey man, maybe when you finish up with your deal, come and help me get into condition, the thought was there. And then it developed basically when I was finishing up with my cycling deal, that he connected with me and said, hey, I want to take you up on that deal. Let's give it a go. Help me get strong, get me in conditioning. And that's how it went. It got into the sport. So I'd actually come back to South Africa at the time, and then Ricky Carmichael called me, and I ended up flying back, but not to California. I flew straight out to Tallahassee, Florida, which I'd never been there before, and went out on a limb. Just said, okay, listen, let's see how it goes. We'll give it 6 months and see, if this can work, or am I actually helping you, or we're banging heads or whatever. But that's how it all started. It was actually the conditioning and strength and the nutrition part that I'd learned over the years with cycling. And obviously I was also a personal trainer before that.
Okay.
So all of that came full circle into this sport, but specifically for that area. That's where it started.
How does that compare to what he was used to? Because obviously, I mean, motocross riders are some of the fittest guys in the world, right?
The way I looked at it when I first started with him was he rode a lot, and there was a lot of discipline to that. And I got to understand sort of their basic training program with regards to what you do on a motorcycle to cover your bases, but they at that particular time, they didn't look at particular cardio training to elevate their actual cardio fitness. And I get it. With motorcycles, you've got to be fit, you've got to be strong, you got to, but you've also, the bike, you've got to manhandle that machine. So if the guy can't manhandle a machine or doesn't have the talent and ability to actually ride the motorcycle, then the other piece is not going to probably help, you know? So I was that other piece that he found out when he moved to the bigger class that he actually needed. He actually didn't need it on the smaller bikes. He could manhandle a bike. He could make the races. He was doing well. He was winning 125 championships. But it's when he jumped to the bigger bike that was more of a handful for him. He was getting sort of running out of steam. He was crashing, then he was getting hurt. So that's when he decided that, man, I maybe got to look at this other piece that probably should be there, but I haven't really addressed well. Um, and that's how he contacted me. And then I had to put my ideas in of what I thought, and there was some learning curves because it was all new
Yeah.
at that point. And the belief too was, as soon as I got him down on his weight, was, oh, he's going to run out of energy. I mean, they had the ideas of that you eat more and all that so that you've got energy, which yeah, there is a part to that. But if you're eating the wrong stuff, it's not economical for the body. And what I called the power to weight ratio of how you should be on a motorcycle, from my thinking, that wasn't where he was at that point. So he had to trust me. And then I also had to trust that he would apply all the things that I was going to throw at him. And the best case was that I actually was prepared to go and live with him.
Okay.
And I told him, hey, what I'm eating, you're going to eat, and we're going to go through this together. And I think that was the biggest sort of benefit or turning point where he trusted me, because I was literally doing it with him.
Okay.
And then it evolved over time to me starting to monitor, okay, what's his heart rate on the motorcycle, which I was very surprised how hard that is. And piecing that together with all the rest of the cardio training. So it started to evolve when we adapted and started to fix areas that he needed help in.
We always talk about on the podcast. We always talk about the South African mentality and the work rate. I mean, we are some of the hardest workers in the world. I don't care what anybody says. How did that South African philosophy influence your coaching?
Well, I think it was big. I mean, our upbringing. I think when you look at South Africa at the time, there was a lot of discipline. I mean, I remember at school getting caned, and that was normal. If you stepped out of line, there was a teacher could give you a good walloping, and it was normal. I mean, my mom was too. If I stepped out of line, she would give me a good tight one, and so there was always that discipline. But I think the biggest thing was, the army. Geez, I went to, it felt like I was serving a sentence. It was a mean infantry camp that was ready for the border, and it was a lot more discipline. But when I look at the training aspect, I came from a family. My dad was a marathon runner. When he finished it, he was a cyclist. He was always, I mean, our whole world was around sport. I mean, and even he would challenge us. You can't watch TV until you've done 10 pull-ups outside. And so the lifestyle that I feel that we had, and then I do think that the whole going to the army and all of that added discipline and structure sort of helped me with the discipline and structure to then take that into the sport, and I got to give Ricky and Johnny O'Mara credit, because I think they saw that was needed and gave me the opportunity to say, all right, hey, I think there's something in it, and we're going to trust you to come in here. And yes, if it hadn't worked out well, we wouldn't even be talking today. I would have been back to South Africa and whatever after that.
Yeah, I was going to say it took a favor for fortune in that aspect. I mean, like you say, if it didn't work out with Ricky, which it clearly did, I mean, they don't call him the GOAT for nothing, and I think you had a lot to do with it, No,
well, thanks, Warren. I appreciate that. I mean, I was with him for 7 years till he retired, so that was a good amount of time. And honestly, how I saw how he evolved and going up the ranks and what he did was very impressive. But it was a massive, what I call a university for me, learning the whole motorsport part of it.
Right.
The engagement with the teams, the tracks, what it takes to have a facility, what is needed, all their racing, the different dynamics. I was shoved right into where talk about taking notes and evolving and changing my plans and my training to fit in with what they were doing and learning and seeing all of these things. I honestly couldn't have wished for a better learning sort of, I call it university
Mm.
for motocross and supercross. That was part of it, but it wasn't easy,
Yeah.
because you got to give up something, and like I said, I had to live with him. I had to give up a lot of my own sort of freedom in a way to put myself in that position and hang in with it. It's not easy, but overall it evolved and then developed to the other riders, and then when I go 26 years later now, even to with the facility, which I would have never thought that I would have
Mm.
been able to have one of those, because the logistics of it is so far out there,
Yeah. And that brings two questions. So, I mean, it's not only Ricky Carmichael. You got a list of champions. It's like I
Mm.
think you got more championships than than most of the teams combined. So, working with all these elite athletes and things, have you ever had an athlete that's turned around and said, "I can't"? Because I mean, let's be honest. You're well known for training the guys hard.
Mm.
So, have you
Yeah.
had an athlete that's turned around and gone, I can't do it. I can't do it."
Yeah. No, no, no. Those. I mean, the first one that comes to mind was when Ken Roczen, joined up with me. It was his first year on 450,
Okay.
and I actually thought to myself, well, heck, and I had Villapoto still at the time. But I knew Villapoto was going to be ending in another year. He was retiring.
Mm.
So Kenny had actually approached me, and I respected that, because he was looking to, hey, I'm going to move up the ranks from 250 to 450 class. I want some help, and you're going to be the guy. And I was like, okay, I think this will be great, and that coordinated. But I only managed to do 1 year with him,
Okay.
because I think his perspective on the workload and what I knew didn't really align with where he was at. And that's no disrespect to Kenny. He's a phenomenal athlete. He's still going strong today.
Yeah.
But his first year with me, and I always say the rookie year is brutal when a guy goes from 250 to 450. There's a learning curve. There's the workload, because they race so much more than the 250 guys. So there was a lot on him. And I was sticking to my guns, but he, at the end of that, I think there were two things where he did feel like the workload was way, way more than what he kind of expected. And also he's talented. So talented guys sometimes don't think they have to work that hard. And it's true. I think there is a balance there.
Yeah.
But he did get third in the Supercross season that year. In his rookie year, he did win a couple races, and then he won the outdoor series. So I actually felt like, man, we've done pretty dang good considering. But there was a combination where I do know he felt that load was too much, and also his dad was stepping back into the picture, which, like I said, I'm never going to step between a dad and his son. That's something that has to align between them. So
Yeah.
I'd say the combination kind of ended our deal. But when you mentioned, hey, have I had a guy that believes that it's too much? Yeah, yes, there are guys that, and like I've always stated, hey, my program is probably not for everybody,
Yeah.
for sure. And that's just the way it is. You can't please everybody, and everyone is different. And they have different needs and desires. So trying to get that alignment and that trust, because they've got to trust in me just like I'm going to trust in them to actually do the job properly. That is a commitment, and sometimes that doesn't work out.
Yeah. Okay, and that brings me to my second part of the question. Have you ever had a rider that's you just thought was totally elite, like a super athlete, that you were very impressed with, and everything you threw at him, he just ate it up?
I mean, the one that comes to mind, well, firstly, when I finished up with Ricky and then went on to James Stewart, I thought I'd hit the jackpot, because I was like, man, this is the most talented guy. We've been fighting him for the last few years with Ricky,
Yeah.
and now he approached me and says, man, I'd like you to help me out. I was like, well, this is going to be phenomenal. We're going to just crush the world
Yeah.
because, yes, to me, I believe he was the most talented guy. Um, and yes, he hadn't performed up to what I thought he was capable of. And that initially went really, really well. Whatever I did throw at him, he ate it up. I mean, it was impressive. And he was all in. I mean, you couldn't, and then unfortunately he did have a little issue and he had to have his knee fixed. So that kind of set back a little bit. But then he came back and we 24-0, just like Ricky did in the motocross. And I thought, well, we're back in,
Yeah.
we're on it. And then the following year won the Supercross. Um, and then after that, we weren't seeing eye to eye. He believed that he didn't really need to, work that hard. He's kind of back. He's setting the bar, and that is, that's a choice. Like I said, I have no disrespect for James. He was phenomenal. He's a great rider. But he wanted to move on to other scenarios. So then I had to obviously change. But I'd say one of the other riders that I did throw a lot at him, and he with great attitude and utmost, I'd say, respect was Ryan Dungey. When he came on board, I was blown away at his work ethic and how he applied himself to, pretty heavy structure, and how he carried himself and made it happen. So yeah, there's definitely guys in there that are
Yeah.
very unique and in their way.
I must tell you a funny story about Ryan Dungey. So we were at Glen Helen watching one of the races, and we were standing by the podium waiting for the whole thing. And I dropped my cell phone, and I mean, there was a huge crowd there, and they were spraying champagne and whatever. And I ducked down to pick up my cell phone, and I went like this, and his goggles landed on my arm. I've actually got them signed up in my thing. I didn't even know whose they were. And I was like, well, who's goggles? And my son said, oh my God, they're Ryan Dungey's goggles. And the guy next to me offered me $2,000 straight away. It was like, I'll give you $2,000 for those goggles right now. And I was like,
Really?
we didn't even know what was going on. It was so strange. But I got them up in my office signed, which is quite a big thing. Yeah. So I thought I'd share
That's
that.
pretty unique. I mean, what's the chances of that, eh?
And we are huge Ryan Dungey fans. We my son and I have obviously followed him forever, and I'm actually happy that you mentioned that. So tell me, let's talk about the Baker's factory for a second. What was the turning point that made you build this empire?
Well, I never planned on having a facility. I actually just thought to myself, that's going to be way too much work, way overwhelming, and I didn't have the budget to do it. Like, I was doing okay, but I didn't have what James Stewart had, what Ricky had, Chad Reed at the time, and all these that had decent amount of budget to, like, okay, I'm going to buy. You needed a minimum of 50, acres of land, and so I never even thought of it until I was finishing up. Villa was going to retire, and he had a place, and he mentioned to me, he said, hey, man, I'm retiring, and do you want to take over this place that I have? And I said, well, yeah, I'm going to need a place because, at the time, I still had Kenny. I had Adam Cincerello. Jason Anderson had just joined in. I was like, man, and then Marvin Muscan had just joined in. He was still on 250s. So I had athletes, and I thought, man, I'm going to need a place because these guys don't have their own place. So I said, all right, hey, yeah, let's do it. And he said, I'll just get the place valued from basically like from the bank value, whatever, and you just pay me monthly. You pay buy it from me. And I was like, well, this is awesome. Yeah, that's just turnkey.
Yeah.
Way to go. But except there was another rider that his dad had very, very big, deep pockets. And that rider wanted that place. He told his dad, hey, I want that place. And so his dad went behind and got hold of Ryan and then said to him, hey, man, I want to buy your place. And he said, well, listen, I made a deal with Aldon, so he has first dibs. So the guy said, yeah, that's no problem. Whatever you want to sell it to Aldon, I'll give an extra heavy load on top of that.
Jeez, yeah.
You let me know what you want to do. So he came to me and said, "Hey, Aldon, you've got first right. Our handshake was, but this guy's prepared to pay X amount more than what it's worth." And I was like, "Well, I'm not even in the same realm. I mean, I can't borrow from the bank more than what it's actually worth."
Yeah.
So I was a little bit disappointed at the time because I was like, man, I was kind of banking on just taking over a turnkey place and making my life a lot easier. But then I had to run out and go and try and find land and go through the whole process of, okay, I need to go and get a bank loan. I need to go to the county. I need to try and get the permits for this. It was overwhelming. I mean, there was some heavy times to try and get it to take off. And then the worst was I went to the bank, and even though I had contracts with all these riders, and I proved to them like, hey, I'm getting paid, or contracts. Can you give me the loan? And the bank said to me, hey, your idea of building tracks and whatever that's too much of a risk.
Yeah.
And so I left the bank and I was like, well, this is great. So much for let's help new business or whatever.
Yeah.
I was basically shocked, but I ended up going back to Willow and I said, hey, buddy, I've got a problem, man. I've tried to do this. Can you help me? And he was actually very, very cool and said, Aldon, I'll be your bank. You tell me how much you need to buy the land, build a building, put up the first track. But he said, then you just pay me back. But it was a short, I mean, I was under the gun and look, the good thing for him is if I'd have failed, he could have owned it all,
Yeah.
But that's how it started, where I, definitely was thrown in the deep end. But I got to give lots of respect to, Ryan Villapoto that he didn't have to. And he said, no, listen, I'll be the bank for you,
Wow.
So that's how it started. And then obviously, over the period that was set up, I, had to pay him back for it until I could actually own the place.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you got on the right side of the street because we in our previous podcast, we were talking about Tyler Rattray and the problems he had with his place, which was across the road from you, right?
Yeah. No, look, it's challenging. And that's why I give any respect to anyone that wants to start a facility. There's no neighbor that loves motorcycles, and the noise, you know what I mean, of them, so I can understand that. So finding a place where you can then get it permitted and keep everybody happy, it is a challenge. And unfortunately, where he built, he was really close to some neighbors, and it only takes one to really get upset.
Yeah.
And then you're going to deal with issues where I had to put in it was costly to do a lot of the bank's extra, and I used bamboo to cut, just to make it a lot more soundproof as best as you can. And then, the benefit for me was mine wasn't open to anyone. It was, I had specific professional riders, and I think that was helpful. I do believe if someone trying to have where it's just open to everybody, you will have a lot of issues and a lot of kickback. So yeah, he definitely had a lot more challenges in the beginning, with those sort of scenarios. And then, like anything, if you got those problems, and the chances are it's not gonna maintain. And look, I'm grateful and blessed that now I'm it was 2014, so we're a good 12 years down the line.
Yeah. And talking about hurdles, what was your biggest hurdle with moving over to the States, getting settled? What was your biggest challenge?
I mean, that's a good question. I would say there was two main. Well, obviously cycling, that was very difficult because I didn't have a very good budget to do it properly. And when I look back now, and especially when I look at how professional the motorcycle stuff is, your support group is so important. And I didn't have that. I was on my own. I was okay with it. I had to be, but when I think of all the logistics that I would have to take care of, that I look back now, that was pulling away from me. Because I always wondered, why did I perform better in South Africa than when I was in the States, or even worse, when I went to Europe? And I do look at just that support group is critical.
Yeah.
That and I missed that. So that was the biggest hurdle, was trying to get over that and make it work. And then I think also moving, it's tough. You move from your friends, you move from your family. It takes a while to adapt. It's a different lifestyle. I'd say America is the easiest to adjust to, for
Okay.
sure. But it is a lot different. And those things definitely are tough to adjust to. I mean, I still miss things about South Africa. It is a bummer. I feel like the place has its challenges, and it's difficult to all of that.
Yeah.
But overall, I was thinking the other day, is especially Pietermaritzburg, the weather there very similar to Florida, but they don't get hurricanes. That we
Yeah.
are we're like, well, oh boy, hurricane season, and we better be ready.
Yeah.
So there are things that I'm like, man, that place kind of had it all.
Yeah.
At the time you don't really sort of fathom it, because that's what you're used to. But there's massive. That place is a gem if it could just sort of be stable, and
Yeah.
that's, to me, that's a human problem, not an actual continent problem.
Yeah. When last have you been back?
Oh gosh, I think it was about 2003 that I went back. Unfortunately, my good friend down there, he lost his daughter, and I went down there, to check on him. But my family actually moved from South Africa to Australia.
Okay.
So the reason why I haven't gone back down there is because when I do get time, and this schedule is brutal.
Yeah.
When I do get time, I actually visit my family that are in Australia now.
Okay.
So I don't have enough time to do both, And also, to me it's easier. I try and get South Africans that, like, I still got good friends down there, said, hey man, try and come out here for a visit,
Yeah.
if possible,
Yeah.
and it saves me, because I don't have the same amount of time,
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you still stay in contact with a lot of the South Africans over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, I've got some good friends down there. Actually, one of my best friends that I went to school with, and then also spent some time when I was traveling around Europe and England, and he was with me. His daughter and wife are out. His daughter's on a swimming scholarship
Okay.
in Florida. And so it is cool to see, it's kind of full circle where, other athletes are getting out and showing how, their talents. And it's nice because there's still a connection,
Do you ever see yourself going back there? Like to live permanently, maybe retire?
No. I'm married to an American now, and I have, 2 kids, and I'm settled here now, and I've got too much invested here. And as much as there are certain areas about South Africa that I really miss, I do feel like, man, it's been quite a journey to get settled here, and I'm a full American citizen, and I want it, and I'm respectful about that. I'm blessed to have that. So no, I don't plan on moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really. That's a heavy one.
That's a heavy
So,
question. But I kind of knew the answer, but it's something we always ask. And what's one South African value or tradition that you still carry with you every day?
I still think that when I think of values and tradition, it just goes back to the culture of South Africans, and the work ethic, and discipline is something I always like. Man, that's so respectful. I look at, for such a small country, the talent that has come out there and what it's capable of is very impressive. So, and that's why whenever I see a South African or I come around, and I've got a soft spot for that. because I'm like, man, this is cool. This is, part of where we all, came from. I'd still follow the rugby a lot. I like your hat.
Yeah.
But so that's one of the cultural things you never lose.
Yeah.
I still try and catch up even on cricket. Um, so there's still a lot of interest with what we did down there and what we followed, and even though I've been out here 26 years, I've only finally started to figure out the American football stuff.
Okay.
Like now I can actually watch and say, all right, I understand what each guy's trying to do.
Yeah.
But that's how long it's taken me to figure this one out, and then don't ever get into a conversation with American tries to tell me that the difference between rugby and American football, we did straight away, boy.
It's
I want to
fighting
fight
words, eh?
that one.
Yeah, it's fighting
Yeah.
words. Well, I
So
had that conversation with my son. He's 18 now. I mean, we've been over here
yes,
11 years. So you've met my son, and
yes,
he's a full-on football player. I mean, he's got offers from all over. He's going
right.
to varsity now. He's trying to choose who he's going to, and I have this conversation with him
Congratulations.
every time about
Yes.
football. I'm like, but we don't need pads, to
Exactly.
tackle and
Yes.
stuff like this. And I actually showed him a couple of games when the Boks were playing and stuff like that. And he was wide
Yeah.
eyed. I tell you that. Like he was like,
Yeah.
these acts are crazy. And like,
Yeah.
why would
My
you do
son
that?
also says the same thing. He's like, no, man, that's
Yeah,
not normal.
yeah,
And I'm like,
it's
yeah,
stupid.
that's different breed. We compared to what we're going
Yeah,
on here.
yeah.
So
And
we
and
go backwards.
I must just say, like, just going back to your previous answer, what you say rings true because you mentioned every time you meet a South African, you got a soft spot and stuff like that. Now, I've actually seen it, especially with you. I mean, I met you 5 years ago with Jason Anderson when I did the Jason Anderson video. And when I
Hmm.
met you again at the Supercross, a couple of weeks ago, I was actually
Yeah.
shocked to see your reaction and that you remembered me. Because Americans, I meet them week by week and they're like, oh, where have I met you? And like, so I
Yeah.
can take my hat off to you. I must admit, a gentleman through
No,
and through.
no,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mm.
Like I said, man, with the utmost respect I have for South Africans and the challenges that have been thrown on them, and what's so impressive too, and it's even I have what I mentioned earlier, my best friend's daughter and his wife visiting at the moment.
Mm.
The attitude is always positive
Mm.
and uplifting,
Yeah.
and that's something I don't think I've met a South African that is negative and
Mm.
just kind of miserable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They make the best of it. They got their head up. It's fantastic. In fact, it's a good reminder to myself. But some days I think, oh gosh, what am I doing? But you have your days,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Your
then I
days.
think, like I said, if I just bump into a South African, it's like, phew,
Yeah.
way to go, man. We're good.
Yeah.
We're on top of the world. It's all
It's
good.
like a new Duracell battery. You just got to say, how's it? It's back to normal.
That's right.
Yeah, no, Lekker.
Yeah.
Aldon, it's been fantastic. I got to end off with one final
Yep.
question I ask everybody. As I say, I probably know the answer to this, but is the grass greener on the other side?
Yes, it is. Yeah. I mean, yeah, are there parts that you could never duplicate? But overall, yes, it is, and it goes back. Because I've also often thought of that. Like, how come is America so sort of like a forerunner in things? But it is what goes the attitude, the application, the belief, um, that we can do great things. We can. I mean, it goes that whole positive deal is also on a different level over here of what can be done, what will be done, what we are going to do, and you see it too in with the kids. How, like, I would say when we were young, I was a little shy because I always want to be respectful and not just, and don't talk. when an adult's talking, and so I think there was great discipline in that. But I am blown away at how the kids here just start young, and they can. I mean, and you can see it. If you put a camera or a microphone in front of it, he can just carry on normal.
Yeah.
Where it took me forever to sort of even get used to, like, okay, what am I going to do now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the American dynamic on what they believe and what they stand for and what they foresee they can do is definitely very, very impressive. And it shows through with,
Yeah.
obviously they got the numbers too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So going back to your question, I do believe the grass is greener here, with regards to and what they do and what they put in and into the details of things. So yeah, very blessed to be here and definitely want to honor the what we have here.
Great way to end the session. Aldon, thank you very much, man. It's been fantastic, and we'll see you at the races.
Yes, Warren, thank you, and hey, keep up the good work there, mate.
Yeah,
All
thanks
right.
a lot, man. Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you saw, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so we can share more of these interviews. And as always, check your Tuesday.